Yo, Hegassen here, and today we are reviewing Spider-Man Homecoming, the miracle film made by two rival film studios. That in itself is amazing that it even exists. But how amazing is the actual film? Let's find out. So the film starts off and you get the Spider-Man theme playing over the Marvel Studios music, and at this point you're like, wow, Civil War wasn't a dream, Spider-Man really is in the MCU. This is awesome.
Hey everyone.
Good job.
And it starts off where Civil War left off. We got Spider-Man, he's got his new suit, and it's a kind of an origin film, but not an origin film. It's not an origin film in the sense that he's already got his powers. You know, he just talks about that in a little bit of dialogue. Uncle Ben's already dead. But it is an origin in the fact that, you know, he's still very much trying to figure out his place in the world, figure out how to best use his powers. So we find out that after the events of Civil War, you know, Spider-Man hasn't become a big member of the Avengers. He's just gone back to being your everyday local superhero, your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. And, you know, he's trying to be the big hero, you know, he's trying to help out those in need and fight crime. But he hasn't really got that much to do, so he's just kind of going around his day trying to figure out what to do. He spends most of his time just like helping old ladies and doing backflips for people, and it's actually generally quite fun to see. It's fun to see that you got this world of superheroes, you know, all of these big Avengers and stuff. There's lots of little nods to the Avengers and stuff in this film as well, and I do like the fact that it's set in a world where superheroes are very much a thing and just part of everyday life now, and he's just going around the town just trying to help out, and everyone's like, hey, you're that spider guy and stuff like that, and it's just like part of life for everybody in that neighborhood.
Hey! You're that spider guy on YouTube, right? Call me Spider-Man! Okay, Spider-Man! Don't flip!
And Spider-Man hasn't really got anything to do because Tony won't let him in to the Avengers. You kind of get this feeling at the beginning of this film that Tony's just kind of used him for Civil War and then just abandoned him afterwards. You know, he talks to Happy Hogan over the phone, or like at least like messages him, but you kind of get the sense that his messages aren't really going anywhere, and that whenever he does speak to Happy doesn't really seem like he's that happy to be talking to him. You know, Happy's got other things on his mind. It just seems like Spider-Man's just like a bit of a like afterthought, a bit of a side project. I do really appreciate how the film opened, where you get the kind of perspective of Spider-Man going into Civil War and stuff, and you do get this nice transition of, yeah, he was just a normal kid, your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. He gets instantly thrown into this world with the Avengers, with Ant-Man going giant, you know, with Black Panther there, and Vision, a robot, firing laser beams. And then, like, the next day, he's back to being your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, and that is kind of the drive in this film that Peter wants. He wants to get back into that Avengers world. He wants to get into, you know, more of that global scene of superheroing and fighting bigger crime, not just helping out the old ladies, and that is like one of the main plots of this film that's driving Peter in this film. It also confirms the fact that Happy was apparently there in Civil War as well, we just didn't see him. And I'm very glad that we get to see Happy again. Sure, I do still feel like he should have died in Iron Man 3 just to make that plot point a little bit more heavy in Iron Man 3. But because he survived, I'm really glad to see him here again. Big fan of Jon Favreau, even more so after the Mandalorian panel at Star Wars Celebration. So always great to see more Happy Hogan. And like I say, their dynamic in this film, Happy Hogan and Spider-Man's, that's really funny. And because Spider-Man, Peter Parker, is now back to his regular life, we get to see him going about his regular life. And that's really fun. We get to see him going to school, we get to see him at home and stuff, and it makes this like a very grounded, very almost very relatable film. And when he goes to school, we get introduced to all of his classmates and everyone, and there's a lot of great little characters in this lot. The standouts, of course, are Ned, he's sidekick throughout the film, and Michelle, who isn't in this film as much. Of course, at the end we find out that her nickname is MJ. So her character's kind of here very much for setup, but all of her scenes are great and they're really good fun. And of course, like I say, Ned is in this. He is awesome. He's probably one of my favourite sidekicks in all of the MCU. He's up there with like War Machine and stuff. He's so much fun. The guy in the chair. And I'm glad that they didn't do that classic trope here of, oh, the sidekick is, you know, he's as excited as the superhero to find out that the superhero has powers. And then they have a falling out because he gets jealous and stuff, and then they split up and then they get back together. They didn't do this in this film, so that was good. Really glad that that trope never existed. And we get a lot of great stuff between Peter Parker and Ned. We also have a lot of little side characters that all have really good moments. Standouts for me are, of course, the teacher. He's really funny. Most of his lines land really well. And we get those two little kids on the TV screen. They only ever think like 2 or 3 little scenes. The first one in particular is really funny, where that guy gets rejected to the homecoming. It just zooms in on his really upset face. I just find that really hilarious. The humour in this film is definitely on point. It's a really funny film. I actually forgot how funny this film was. This is only the 3rd time I've seen this film, so a lot of it was actually kind of fresh again, since last time I saw it was probably when it just came out on Blu-ray. So I'd forgotten a lot of these jokes, so it was great to revisit them. And yeah, this is a hilarious film. Definitely one of the funnier Marvel movies. Out of all of the side characters, probably Flash Thompson is the worst, but I guess that's what he's meant to be. That is meant to be his character. He's meant to be a bit of a dick. And he's just another one of them characters that, you know, is probably set up for future movies. And we also have Liz. Liz is a character I'm not that much invested in. Her actual kind of plot point throughout this film annoys me a little bit. I mean, you have this beautiful, smart woman who clearly really likes Peter, and Peter constantly lets her down. You know, he doesn't go to a party, or he does and then he disappears. He doesn't go swimming with them when they want to have their little sneaky swimming party.
Yeah, boy.
He goes with them to the competition and then abandons them at the last minute, and then she gets in a life-threatening situation and she doesn't know that he's there as Spider-Man, so he's essentially abandoned her during that. And yeah, at the end of this, she still wants to go to the prom with him, or the homecoming in this. She still wants to go to the homecoming with this. What is going on there? Out of all of the stuff in this film, that is the most unrealistic thing in this film. This guy, Peter Parker, has let her down so many times in so many important things to her over the last week, and she still wants to go homecoming with him. I've had girls stop messaging me because I made a spelling mistake, and yet she is still willing to forgive him, even though he abandoned her at the most important competition that she's been talking about for ages in this film. Okay, fair enough. I mean, I'm kind of actually happy at the end of the film where they don't actually get together, because yet again he abandons her at the homecoming. Maybe I'm just a tiny little bit jealous of Peter Parker as well. And probably even more so about the fact that at the end of this film, you know, Liz is gone, and then Michelle, another beautiful smart girl, also is attracted to Peter Parker. What's going on here? Man, I need superpowers. But anyway, let's talk about the action. I talked about that bit in Washington DC. That was a great little action scene. And the action in this film is really good. What I do like about the action in this film is that, you know, it's not just Spider-Man in New York City swinging around New York like we're used to him seeing. In fact, we don't really get much of that at all. They take Spider-Man to places in this film that you don't normally see Spider-Man, so you get very fresh Spider-Man action scenes that I really appreciate. You know, you get to see what would Spider-Man be like if he was fighting villains in the suburbs, where he's just running on maybe 2-3 store housing. You know, what would Spider-Man do if he goes to a field and there's nothing to latch onto? How would Spider-Man traverse a road? You know, he's swinging from the lampshades, or is he just sitting on each car? So the action does feel very fresh, and I very much appreciate it. The action scenes are very good. I do like that Washington DC film. Here we also find out that this Spider-Man, he hasn't actually gone that high. He hasn't really experimented in New York with going up the skyscrapers. He's very much stuck to the, you know, outer bits of New York where the buildings aren't as tall. So here he's like, whoa, I'm a little bit high. And it's good to see a Spider-Man where he's just learning that. This is where it, again, it's like an origin story, but it's not an origin story. So as I touched on earlier on, the action in this film, it comes from the fact that Peter is looking for, you know, bigger fish to fry, and he finds it in the form of the Vulture and his crew. Let's talk briefly about the Vulture. Very good villain. We see them right at the beginning of the film, like he's kind of his origin, how he started, and we see that he was salvaging everything after the Avengers assemble, all the Chitauri stuff, and the government comes along and just kicks him off without any warning. The government, like, a little bit of a dick here, to be honest. And so you feel a little bit sorry for him. He manages to keep 1 or 2 little bits of tech. And from here he makes like a business where he's providing the underworld with all of this technology, and he's selling like Ultron guns and Jatari tech and stuff, and he's made his own thing, the Vulture suit, and he's actually really cool. He's a lot more grounded villain. He's not just like your madman kind of businessman or doctor or something just trying to take over the world. He's just trying to make a living in this world. He's found a little niche where he can make a living, and he's doing that to make money, and he's using that money to help protect his family. So he's actually quite a relatable villain, and he is a very good villain as well. I like his suit, I like his wing designs. I really want to see him versus Falcon one day. Okay. And of course, towards the end of the film, we get that great twist where we find out that the Vulture is actually Liz's dad. And that is an awesome scene. I really like that scene where they're in the car and he's slowly figuring out who Peter Parker actually is. Then we get that great confrontation from them. We get into the final fight with them, and I'm not gonna lie, it's not my favourite in the MCU. It's a little bit dark at times, it's a little bit hard to see what's going on, but it is a very satisfying end to the character, and more importantly, he survives, which is amazing. We also get a few other side little villains. We get Shocker, who isn't really that good. He's just basically got these two little metal arms and hints of yellow as an homage to his old suit from the comics, but you don't really get to see that. It very much feels like whoever wears the Shocker gloves becomes the Shocker, and that's exactly what we see in this film. We actually get two Shockers in this film, so Shocker isn't that exciting of a villain, kind of a little bit of a throwaway villain, which is a shame for that character. We also get hints towards the Prowler. We get Donald Glover here playing the Prowler, with also hints towards Miles Morales, but he's only in 2 scenes, so it feels again like they're setting this up for sequels. I don't think we've seen him in the trailers for the new film, so I don't know when they're going to deal with the Prowler, but it just feels like they kind of wasted that character here in this film. But the scene that we did get the Prowler in was the interrogation scene, and that was so much fun. Really funny scene, and again that's where we learn that Peter Parker doesn't really know what he's doing. He's still very much learning.
Not a girl, I'm a boy. I'm a man.
And we get to see a lot more of his spider suit. His spider suit is great in this. It's good to see a really tech-heavy suit in the films compared to what we've seen in other live-action Spider-Man films. I do feel like sometimes there's a little bit too much technology in this suit. It's just like fabric, and yet it's got like a heater in it. It's got all of these voice filters and stuff.
Not a girl.
Surveillance stuff. But it is fun to see him learning it, and his computer AI that he has in it. What's her name? Karen. She's really good. They have a sweet little relationship, her and Peter. And the suit, of course, ties into the fact that, yes, Peter still has a connection to
Tony's stank.
And we get Tony Stark in this. He's not in it that much, but it's good to see Tony in it. Very much blends it into the Avengers universe and the wider MCU universe, and continues on what we saw in Civil War. Their relationship is good. Of course, you're led to believe that Tony doesn't really care about Peter Parker, but what we find out in this film is that actually, yeah, he generally does care. I like the fact that when Tony's talking to Peter, very small details throughout the film, like the fact that an old lady gave him a churro. Tony knows about this, and so he's clearly investing a lot of time and effort in finding out about Peter and keeping an eye on him, and he really does care, and they have this like father-son dynamic. And we find out that Tony has kind of been pushing Peter aside a little bit because he doesn't want Peter to become like what he became, He wants to very much protect Peter, but Peter doesn't really realise this. And Tony actually teaches Peter a lesson in this film, that you can still be a hero even without the suit. And at the beginning of this film, Peter is very reliant on the suit, and that's his little arc throughout the film of learning that, yeah, he doesn't need to be an Avenger. He doesn't need this big flashy suit. As long as he can still be a hero and someone that he can be proud of, then that's fine. It's the person that makes the hero, not the powers. So what do I think of this film overall? Definitely a very, very funny film, as I pointed out. Really good action. Great to see Spider-Man in a fresh environment. I do feel like sometimes there's a little bit too much setup that right now hasn't had much payoff. And the final fight, I feel like it wasn't as good as some of the other action scenes earlier on. I'm not always a big fan of a late night dark final fight where you can't really see what's going on. But overall, this film was really good. Loads of great side characters that were all really fun. Definitely a universe I'm looking forward to seeing expand. So for me, Spider-Man Homecoming it's a gold tier. It's a low gold tier, but it's a gold tier. Really fun, enjoyable film. Definitely a fun watch. Oh, also, in this film we see that Tony Stark's robot arms are back as well. So, they're back. Another good reason to like this film. The only kind of thing I would say about this film is that it's not really a fault of the film, but the overall kind of behind the scenes stuff of this film is, where is this franchise going? Obviously, we've got the next film has been announced and the trailer has come out. I kind of wish they hadn't done that because, as we know, currently Spider-Man is dead. But yes, we are getting another film. But what's gonna happen after that? You know, it seems like Sony very much wants to make its own Spider-Man universe. And currently there's like 3 different things going on. We've got the Homecoming stuff in the MCU. We have Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which is great. But as an animation, that very much feels like it can stand on its own, stand at the side. But then we also have this Venom film and the Venom-verse that they're kind of making with all of the villains. And I don't know what's happening there because that's like, they're kind of in the MCU, but they're not in the MCU. They're like adjacent to the MCU. And I'm guessing at some point they're going to want to bring Spider-Man into it. But is it going to be Tom Holland Spider-Man? Is it going to be a third Spider-Man for the Sony, family? What's going on there? If it is Tom Holland, then he does go into the Venom-verse. Does that mean that all of a sudden everything about Homecoming and Tom Holland's Spider-Man now isn't part of the MCU? Or is Venom then part of the MCU? It's very confusing. I'm not quite sure where it's going to go. I did like Venom. I'll probably actually will review it at some point eventually as like an adjacent to the MCU film, since it is an adjacent to the MCU film. But yeah, hopefully in the future it doesn't all get a little bit too confusing. I don't want an X-Men thing where it doesn't make sense anymore. But that's just a small gripe. Overall, Spider-Man Homecoming, as a film on its own, as a film in the MCU, it's really good, really enjoyable. Gold tier.
Not bad.
Hey, so thanks for watching. What did you think? Let me know about it in the comments below. And, if you enjoyed my video, maybe give it a like. And if you really liked it, why not subscribe? You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram and Twitch. Oh, and here's a related video you might enjoy, and something more fresh. I've been Hegassen, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye!